Hello fellow cinephiles, Film Guru here. Today I'm revisiting the two John Wick films in preparation for John Wick 3 Parabellum, which I only found out today is Latin for prepare for war. What I've decided to do is review them together, not as a separate thing, and sort of talk about what I'm expecting and hoping from the third film. The John Wick films have now become known as a trilogy, which I think is great. I think that's fantastic. I hope they don't do any more films because I think that these three are perfect, but I would love to see a series based upon the Continental, the hotel that takes place, the hotel that all the assassins go to within the films. I think it would be a fantastic series. So John Wick 1. I remember when the first John Wick film came out, and no one really knew anything about it. It was starring Keanu Reeves and was directed by two stuntmen turned directors, and no one knew what it was going to be like. I remember when it first came out and I went to the cinema and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, I thought it was entertaining and fun. I thought Keanu was really great. I loved the action. It was a really great and solid film. And now it's become a cult hit, and there's a lot of expectations with it. There's a lot of hype around the particular film, and I've read some reviews of people who've just watched it recently and haven't got what people liked about it and haven't enjoyed it as much as everybody else and thought it was just a basic action film, which it is, but there's so much more to it. What Keanu Reeves is capable of, and it is quite extraordinary. All the fight sequences he does, all the gunplay and all the action sequences that within this film are fantastic. What I really like about it is when you first watch this film, you don't really know who this man is. You know that he loses, his wife passes away, he's trying to make sense of the things. She sends him a gift, which is a little puppy dog, on the day of her funeral. I guess she sends it to him to help him cope and deal with what's transpired and to grieve the loss of his wife, the love of his life, and the reason he left the life behind that he was involved in. Then as the film goes along, Russian mobsters decide to rob him, stealing his car and killing the dog. And the rampage he goes on for revenge. And then slowly but surely we start to realise who he is, that he's a known hitman. They talk about him being the boogeyman, and the main villain of the piece really talks about who he is. And we get to see these imagery as it goes along, and I think this is fantastic. And it ultimately ends up in a bloodbath. For those who haven't seen it, it's definitely worth your time. And I'm going to talk about a little bit about spoilers here, so if you haven't seen it, it might be best to turn this video off and go and watch it. But for those who have seen it, I just want to go into a bit more depth in regards to this particular first film. He becomes the eyes that we see the world through. We get to see what he was involved in and the people he knew, and he's very highly respected and feared for being who he was, being a really well-known and successful hitman and contract killer, that he's feared throughout the towns and cities that these particular film takes place in. I love that he goes to the Continental. This is a place this is a hotel where I guess all the other assassins and hitmen stay. And there's particular rules regarding it. You can't kill anybody within the grounds of this particular hotel. And if you're going to do it, you break the law and then you get thrown out or ultimately killed. And it depends on how high up it goes and the people who're fully in charge. And so as the film goes along, we start to see the world that he was part of and the world he has to get back involved in. Even though he doesn't want to, he's very reluctant to return to it. And throughout the film, people keep asking him if he's returned. And he hasn't got an answer and hadn't really thought about that because he's got one mission, one purpose, and sole purpose is to kill the people responsible for killing his dog and stealing his car. And ultimately he says, yes, I am. The action, like I said, the action sequences are fantastic in this movie. There's a lot of great action scenes and set pieces. Keanu's really great, does most of his own stunts in it. And the gunplay he does is absolutely fantastic to watch. You really believe he is this guy. He's a man of few words, but he carries such gravity and history, and he's truly a legend within his field. And he's so reluctant to get back into that world, but he feels he has to. He wants to make the people suffer who attacked him. And we see that the Continental is run by Winston, played by Ian McShane. And he's sort of this great, sort of interesting character who runs this place, and it's his place. He sets the rules and he says what goes and what doesn't go. There's a secret club within it that you get to see. I love that the world that's created ultimately that we get to see bit by bit throughout this film, that there's particular coins that are made that barter system, and so they have their own coins within it, and they're worth money in the particular areas and places that this sort of organisation reaches, I guess. And because the start of the film sets up that he's, you know, this average guy to begin with, and he lost his wife and stuff like that, you really start to feel for him. I think they spent a great deal of time building that, where you feel for this character and you go on the journey with him and you want him to succeed, even though it is bloody and violent, because he's such a great character, I think, that we learn piece by piece. And hats off to the particular directors of this. I had never really heard of these guys before this film, and I think they've done a fantastic job. It just feels like a perfectly made film. It's perfectly written, directed, and put together. The music's fantastic, the acting's solid, the action sequences and set pieces are fantastic to watch. And it just seems nothing is out of place. Everything serves a purpose, every piece of dialogue, every shot, every scene. It all leads to one thing, but it encompasses so much. And we learn throughout the film the world that he comes from, rather than being told completely what it is. We get to see it in action. And I think that was a great choice. I love behind the scenes where people put contracts on other assassins and people. It's sort of traditional and old school. It's, you know, old days of the call center and the operators who transferred calls beyond to one person to the other. And when a hit is put out on a particular assassin or someone else, you get to see these women type up a piece of paper and roll it up and send it somewhere, wherever it needs to go. It's like it sort of resorts back to the 40s and 50s in a way, of the way the telephone was used and the people behind the scenes doing things. There's not a lot of technology in this film. Yes, there's mobile phones and there are computers, but they're very ancient, the ones they use, and they all serve a purpose. And I just like that. I like the feel of it, this old traditional sense of it. I liked the costumes. It really felt like the 40s and 50s and 60s, the way they were dressed, that they all wear suits or dresses or whatever that particular character wears. And I like that as well. I just think this is one of the best action films. It's a solid movie and a great and entertaining film. And for me, I'd give it 4.5 out of 5. I think it's a brilliant movie, and it's a movie I go back to over and over and over again. John Wick Chapter 2. Now, this film picks up from the end of the last film. It's a few days later, I think. And in this film, it begins with him getting his car back, and what he does to get his car back, and the amount of people he takes out to get his car back. And he nearly destroys it by trying to take it back from the people who stole it. And that's where the film begins. He feels like he's got the revenge that he wanted, and he goes back to retirement. But this only lasts so long. Ultimately, someone comes calling, a particular person that he worked with, a man that helped him get out of the life. They ultimately have these markers. Use these to accomplish something later. It's like owing a favour. And they prick their fingers and put their bloody thumbprints within it. And then once the job's complete, then the other person puts their bloody thumbprint in it. And he's ultimately forced to get back into this life and back into this world. John doesn't want to get involved because he's retired, but because he went back into the world just for a brief moment, he's ultimately felt that he's returned to something he said he never would. Ultimately, this associate blows up his house and destroys yet again something else, and he reluctantly has to go and do this particular job that he doesn't really want to, but he has to because of the marker. And this is where the film sort of becomes sort of interesting. They open the world a bit more, they broaden it. We get to see there's more continentals in different countries. There's one in Rome that's run by somebody else with the same rules and regulations that the one in New York is. And I really like that, exposing the world and developing it. I think this was a great idea for a sequel. Rather than just do a rehashing of what you'd done in the first film, it's expanding the world, the universe. It's continuing on a story straight from the first one into the second one, but giving it a bit more, opening it up much wider. And we get to see many more assassins and killers. And I think that's great. Common plays a really great character. The acting is solid once again, and the action sequences up the ante in this. They're much more full on, there's much more, the body count's much higher. And what he uses as weapons is quite extraordinary. There's ultimately a contract put out on him, and he just gets attacked by so many people that he has to defeat, all trying to get this 7 million to ultimately kill John Wick. And the weapons he chooses to use are extraordinary. They talked about him using a pencil, killing 3 guys in a bar in the first film, and they talk about it again at the start of the second one. And then we get to see him kill 2 people with a pencil, and it's quite extraordinary to watch. He's a very driven man. He takes a hiding in this film once again, but he ultimately takes out so many people. I counted that he kills about 108 people in this film. And I was just insane amount of people. And there's one sequence that takes place in Rome in the catacombs, or in this sort of hidden area underground, that he kills at least 40 people. It's quite extraordinary to watch. And him driven one thing after another, he just goes and goes and goes until he accomplishes what he sets out to do. I also like how he goes about choosing weapons and how everybody knows him, and he goes from place to place in Rome getting information that he requires, weapons and suits. They tailor-make these suits and put Kevlar within them so that if they get shot, they ultimately don't get killed. Ultimately, as the film goes along, he kills as many people as he can and goes after the main guy that set him up and tried to kill him off and propelled him into this whole situation in the first place. And he ultimately kills him. And because he kills him within the Continental, he's excommunicado. He's kicked out, he's not allowed to go in there anymore and be involved in it. And then they put a bounty on his head and they double the money to 14 million. And ultimately the film ends with an hour before all the contract is opened to everybody. It's gone international. So the third film is going to be quite an epic movie. There's going to be, hoping it's going to be a huge battle, which I think it's going to be. But this film I thought was a great sequel. I think it expanded the world. It did a lot of things that the original did, but it expanded them a lot more. We got to know many more characters and many more aspects of the particular world. From what I've seen of the trailer, the third one picks up straight after the second one, where the bounty's on his head and how he goes about trying to maneuver within the world without having the safety of the Continental. You can see throughout the trailer that Halle Berry ultimately helps him. And I guess we get to be introduced to many more characters and people, allies that he can go to help him through this. I just hope he makes it through. I was watching the first and second one last night, and it just occurred to me that if he makes it through the third one, he needs to go on a vacation. He needs to move up into the middle of nowhere, be away from everybody, and just let it be. Whether that'll happen or not, I don't know. I don't know what the outcome's going to be of this film, of the third one. And I love the fact that it's called Parabellum, like I said at the start, which means prepare for war. This is going to be an ultimate battle and showdown. And I want to see how it pans out. I want to know how it ends. But I'm looking forward to the journey because I think he's a brilliant character, and I've really enjoyed the first 2 films, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this. I think it needs to go epic. It needs to be huge and big, and the set pieces have got to be bigger. The action sequences have got to be more amazing and extraordinary. And we'll see if they're able to accomplish this. I really hope this is the last one in it. I think a trilogy is perfect for these films. If they continue going on, they could make more films, but it could slowly get crappier and crappier. So I think that these is a great trilogy and they should stop here. And like I said, they should do the Continental TV series. I would love to see that because I think that's a very fascinating and interesting world. I'm going to give John Wick Chapter 2 4.5 out of 5. I think it's on the level as the first one. It adds a lot more to it. It's much more entertaining, and the stakes are much higher, I feel, in this film than in the first. So what I will do next is when the third one comes out, I'm going to see it this week, comes out this week, I'll do a review and put that up. But ultimately, I just wanted to revisit these 2 particular films before going to the third, and I thought it was best to put them together as a review rather than singly. As time's running out to do 2 separate videos, I thought it was best to do it as one. Anyway, that's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit subscribe down the bottom. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.